So what are we doing right now? Right now, we're going to jump over to system design. Now, I know people have been asking for this, so we're going to do a few of these types of things. I'm also going to mark these. I just hired a editor, my daughter, but she's going to make not shorts, but she's going to clip them out for some of these things that we do. These segments out as just standalone videos on some YouTube channel. I don't know. Probably not the live YouTube channel. I might have to have a third YouTube channel. That sounds gross, but we'll figure that out. She's gonna cut them for me. I'm gonna show her how to do that. And some of these times when we actually go over something, we can have it cut out from the big long live stream for either future review or for people that just want those, tidy little sections. All right. I think I can actually do this here. I think I can do this here. Something like a marker. Yeah. We'll see if that works. So let's do system design. Welcome. If you're just joining, we're going to cover some system design stuff. And in the comments, if you're watching this video, not live, I recommend you, if you have questions about a certain system design or interview question, go ahead and ask it. We'll be covering these throughout the year, and today we're going to pick up a Design X question. Next week, I think we'll be doing some more around a CDN, but today we're going to do Design X questions. Design X, I'm not talking about the social media app, although we will be doing a social media app. What I am talking about is design a cache, design a CDN, design a delivery app, whatnot. And I have some basic recommendations for those of you that are going to go over that. I kind of wrote it as a blog post, but it's not a blog post. You can't find it anywhere. But if people would like me to write it up as a blog post, I can. But we're going to go walk through this. This is my basic recommendations for a design of X or design of Y interview. And then we're going to jump in and do it for a social media app. Now, if you guys would like to see me get interviewed, I can do that as well. I'm super dumb when getting interviewed. I forget most of everything that I know, but I'm happy to do that. So if we want to do that, we can do that at some time. I'll get Russell or Dirk or some of the more experienced people to interview me. And then we can go through and pick apart the interview, what I did bad, what I did well, and things like that. Okay, so basics of a Design Y interview. I changed it to Y. It used to be X but then I thought people would get confused that I was asking them to design X. So we're basics of a Design Y interview. Thanks, Elon, for ruining that for me. Thank you. My goodness. I didn't realize it was going to cause me problems. All right. Do I freelance or do I work somewhere? I work somewhere. Believe it or not, I pass an interview. I don't know. Every single time I pass interviews, I'm like, the stars aligned. All right. So most Design Y interview questions are open-ended on purpose, okay? So they're open-ended on purpose because anytime you're doing system designs, one of your goals, maybe one of your biggest things, is to gather requirements. Like, as an engineer, if you're asked to design a system, you have to know what that system is. You can't just say, oh, we're going to use microsystems and we're going to do this and this. It doesn't matter. It's all crap if you don't know what the system is. So I leave these system design interview questions really open-ended. I might say, hey, so let's design a social media app, without even telling you what style of social media. Is it a messaging? Is it a whatnot? That's super open-ended. And what I'm looking for is somebody to not say anything but a question. Like, the first thing should be questions. Now, I don't leave it so open-ended for newer people because I don't want to be cruel. So a lot of times if it's like a junior engineer, somebody fresh out of college, I'm going to say, let's design a social media app like X. So I give them, some place to start. And a lot of the times if they're fresh out of college, they just go designing X without any questions. Ask questions. You need to ask questions, because if I say like X, I don't mean just X. I mean like similar to it. So ask questions. Yeah, one of the biggest parts of system design that you'll have to learn is learning to figure out the requirements. The first part of this test is to test to see if you understand that. That's 100% what I'm looking for. So you want to ask generic questions. This is one that I love to see. Ask really broad generic questions and then use those to drill down further in. Okay, you said this. Now what about this? So this shows that you're asking purposeful questions. You're trying to understand how much throughput. So you're going to ask, is there a time of day that the app is expected to be used more? How many users? What type of messages are going to be sent? Is it a messaging app, or is it posts, microblogging, or is it pictures? Because these have effects on your storage, and you can then, as you learn more, you can ask questions to follow up on that. That it's really good if you ask questions that you can follow up with. But yeah, start with some generic questions. It's good. Don't feel like you have to ask all the questions up front. You should start with questions, but you don't have to cover everything. I don't expect you to sit there for 3 hours asking for requirement. It is an interview. We have an hour. Ask the basics and then start moving into it. Now, this is where I would say, like, the more experience you have, the more thoughtful questions I would ask you to come up with. You know, I gave an example here, but like a junior engineer might ask something like, how many daily active users do you expect? Whereas a step up from that would be like asking for usage patterns, and an even further step would be like the expected types of activities. As you drill down, this shows more experience, whereas like a newer engineer is going to be like, oh, daily active users is going to tell me, you know, what my load is. And then what you really realize is like, well, yes, but you got to design for the peak. And so then you really need to know the usage patterns, and then to design for the peak. And then, you know, you really need to know what the type of expected activity is. So yeah, I also put this note in here. Please don't try to calculate the exact size of a payload. I had somebody spend 20 minutes trying to calculate the exact size of a payload. And it was like, dude, you make an estimate. That's fine. You say, hey, we can estimate that, you know, let's say we upload pictures and this is an Instagram-like one. We're going to cap it at 5 megabytes per picture, or 1 megabyte, or whatever it is. And that's going to be the cap. And we're going to compress the images to that, period. Okay. Make assumptions, or as long as you verbalize them. Like, don't assume things, but you can make assumptions. Like, I'm going to assume that, or how I like it when people make assumptions is to make it in a question. Can I assume that the growth will be steady? Or can I assume that it's okay to compress these files to less than 1 megabyte or 5 megabytes? Or you can say it as an assumption like that, or you can say it as like, is there a maximum file size that we're going to support? Can we compress them? And those types of things like that. So it's okay for you to make it as like an assumption in my book. Now, when you say this, you'll get an idea if your interviewer is okay with that. If you say, can I assume that the growth will be steady? If they don't like you making any type of assumption like that and saying it in that way, the first time you'll know. Remember, you're also interviewing that type, the person across from you. And it's okay to read how they like these types of statements. Would it be okay if we said Android is out of scope? Absolutely, Grumpington. Can't know the requirements in advance, and it's not like exact size matters. Another thing about the exact size payload, this is always going to change. I like whatever you exactly calculate with, you know, the max size of the name field and whatnot. It's gonna, like, there are so many PMs that are going to screw with your exact size of that payload. You are fighting a losing battle. You have never met a PM, okay? You have never met a PM. That exact size is going to get screwed. Number one. Grimpington, that's an excellent point. What do you mean expected type of activity? Chad, man, I will get to your answers in just a little bit after this. Is it peak viewing posts, videos, or does peak involve creating a lot of comments? And what you mean by expected type of activity is like on Twitter, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. What is it that you expect people to do? It's you expect at this point to tweet or to zeet. I think it's zeet. It's either zeet or skeet. I like skeet better. Actually, skeet. It's skeeting. That's what we're going to call it. So it's expected that you're skeeting. But maybe that changes. But in general, that's what you're trying to understand. When you hit peak, what does that look like? And this is why, again, when I'm doing the system design interview, I'm looking for different things from different experience levels. Because a lot of the times the question's the same thing. The question doesn't change whether you're a junior engineer or a principal engineer. I'll ask the same question. What does change is my expectations of what you ask for. Again, a junior engineer maybe just stops at how many daily active users, doesn't even know usage patterns, doesn't even know the expected types of activity. And that's okay. That's okay. It means that they're thinking about it. And that's good enough for somebody fresh out of college. They thought, wow, what type of load am I going to have to deal with? And they'll learn the other stuff. Somebody with a couple years, I'd expect usage patterns. If you come to me with more than 6 years, you probably should be expecting the types of activities because you've been burned by this and it's hurt. At this point, this is kind of the first segment. Ask a bunch of questions. Then you're going to move on to an initial design. Now, I'm going to say, keep your initial design simple and clean. There's going to be time to go into more detail, but the thing that you want to do with your initial design is to prove very easily at a high level that you understand the complications of and answers and requirements and how to... That sentence came out really poorly. I'm sorry. So what you want to do really simply is prove that you can design a system to fit for the requirements that you asked. So I'm going to expect that you incorporate all the questions that you asked. That's you're designing a system and I change it up. Like there's no specific system I have in mind when asking this. There's no specific one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold you ask a question. I'm taking notes of the questions and answers you've gotten. And I want to make sure that you design a system that fits what we agreed upon. Okay? So you want to keep a simple design here. Keep it clean. I always like to draw here. I love it when people draw because it's easy to understand. When people are like, oh no, we'll just speak about this. It's hard to keep it straight. It's hard. So it's really nice to just draw it out. Ask for something to draw with. I think it will make your life easier. And expect us to ask questions. Expect you to be drawing something out and us to ask questions. Now, don't consider a question to mean that I don't like it. Because this is what a lot of people will do. They'll be like, hey, we're going to use a monolith. And I'll be like, why are you using a monolith? And then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, well, we could use microservices. No, don't. My question is because I want to see that you had a purpose behind your pick. Whether I agree with the purpose, honestly, doesn't even matter to me. If you can sit there and defend it reasonably with assumptions based off of the things that we talked about above, that's all that I'm looking for. Did you make a decision based off of what we talked about, or are you making a decision based off of what you think the industry happens? Now, I'll tell you what happens a lot of times. Everybody here will say, well, we'll use microservices. And then I'll say, why are you using microservices? Because they haven't asked the number of engineers in the team, how we're going to do team structure, or how the company organizes their work. And if you haven't asked those questions, how the crap do you know how we want to organize our microservices? If you're just saying in architecture because you think it's in, that won't fly by me. I'll give junior engineers that just graduated college a pass on this one. Everyone else, it's a hard fail. If you said we'll use microservices, and you didn't ask anything that relates to using microservices, it's a hard pass from me. Maybe that sounds a little... My point here, though, you can't design something you didn't ask about. So if you didn't ask about it up here, don't design for it. And if you're saying, oh, well, we could use microservices, you could catch yourself. You could be like, well, except I guess that brings me to how do we organize? Because if we're going to use microservices, I think that means that we need to have a team structure like this and probably be a larger company. So I guess maybe, something I didn't ask above would be how many people are going to be working on this? How many engineers do we have? Start asking them. It's never too late to ask questions. So if you get to a point like this, go ahead and ask questions. You're not stuck with the initial questions that you ask. Again, you ask a certain number of questions and then you move on to the initial design. But make sure that if you're designing it, you have made those designs based off of stuff that you've asked questions about. Don't design from popularity. I hate people that design by popular things, because you should engineer your app. You're an engineer. That's what you're getting a job for, right? So yeah, pro tip, I love it when people ask about the company, this fictitious company that we're building this app for. Absolutely love it, because it means they understand the bigger problem. They're designing something not only to handle the front end use case, but they're handling it for the people that we have. If you said build it in Java, I'd be like, do we have Java engineers? I don't know. Hopefully the answer is no. All right, never design a system without knowing the tools at your disposal. So, all right. Okay, so after you have a big high-level design, this is the part where I want you to show me what you're best at. I really want you to dig into, some of the details. Don't go too far, but start to expand on the details, okay? I don't expect you to know everything about a system design. The systems can be large, can be super complicated. Show me what you're the best at. Now, I'm going to warn you though. I said show me what you're the best at. Expect me to know that if you're skirting around something, that you're weak at that. Don't expect me to be an idiot, okay? And don't expect me not to ask questions about what you're weak at, okay? It's fine to say I'm not as good at that. Be open and clear to me, because I will know if you're weaker at it. Just be like, I'm weaker at it, and then explain the best that you can on that topic. So if I ask you about caching and how you're going to leverage caching, and you've never done a whole lot of caching, that's fine. Be like, well, I don't know caching very well, and we'll get into this when we actually do one of these. But here's some of the reasons you could cache and some of the places that you could cache. And in general, at a high level, this is what caching does for us. There you go. You solved it. But be prepared to at least defend at the very highest level what that thing is. Also, if you say that you have 5 years of experience, I'm a generalist. I've always been a generalist. I probably always will be a generalist. If you say you have 5 years of experience, I am going to expect you to be an expert in something and know more than me in something. So I guess maybe that's not fair, but that is kind of how I go about it. I'm going to expect you to know more than me in something, unless if all of our expertise line up, but that's generally not true. So I'm going to want to see you explain some system really, really well, some part of it really, really well, whether that's the security part of it, or whether that's the scheduling part of it, or if that's the whatever part, the caching part of it, whatever part, explain it well. All right. I know that more than you in tons. Perfect. You only know more than me in anything mobile. So I guess there's tons there. Fair. All right. And then what you want to do is wrap that up. You're just going to want to take that, talk about how that whole system, what you need to make sure in this, after you've done a little bit more detailed design, you want to make sure that all of that goes back to what we discussed as the system design. So when you're done with that system design, make sure that you can defend that it meets the expectations and the requirements. That's all. This isn't a real section. This is just something that you should be doing throughout this. Do you much prefer being the interviewer? Me too. So this is my base guide of doing design why interviews.